Can you spot the mistakes in these sentences? Each sentence contains a common error people make when using comparatives or superlatives. If you're having trouble finding the mistakes, or if you often make these kinds of errors yourself, don't worry. This video is perfect for you. Today we'll go through each type of mistake, then I'll explain the misunderstanding behind it and how to avoid it, so that by the end of the video, you'll have a deeper understanding of how to compare nouns in English and feel more confident talking about similarities and differences. To start with, let's look at the first two sentences. Paul is as tall than John, and I was lucky than my little brother. In each case, two nouns are being compared, Paul and John, and myself and my little brother. When comparing nouns, we can either talk about their similarities, what they have in common, or their differences. Similarities can be expressed using the equative construction as, adjective, as. For example, as pretty as solid as helpful as. This construction includes 3 words, but it's helpful to learn it as a single chunk for when we want to talk about a similarity. Differences can be expressed using a comparative construction that includes a comparative adjective followed by the word than. For example, larger than, more beautiful than, colder than. Again, it's helpful to learn this construction as a single unit as well, this time to talk about a difference. Now, we use the same sentence structure to express similarities as we do for differences. We start with a noun or noun phrase, plus a verb, followed by the equative or comparative construction, and then finish with another noun or noun phrase. Let's see how this works and start by looking at some sentences expressing a similarity. For example, the equative sentence, Sarah is as smart as her friend, compares the intelligence level of 2 people, Sarah and her friend, and states that both of them have the same level of intelligence. Both Sarah and her friend are equally smart. The sentence, their house is as big as ours, compares the size of 2 houses, their house and our house, and states that they are the same size. In this case, they are equally big. Now let's see how we express differences. I'll use the same sentence structure as previous examples, but this time I'll use the comparative construction instead. For example, Tom is smarter than his sister. This sentence compares the intelligence level between 2 people, but unlike the previous example, they are not equal this time. Tom's intelligence is greater than his sister's. Tom is smarter. This new chair is more comfortable than my old one. This sentence expresses a difference in comfort between the new chair and my old one. They are not equally comfortable. The new chair is more comfortable than the old one. So remember, comparatives like smarter than or larger than are used to show differences between 2 things. Equatives like as smart as or as big as are used to show that 2 things are equal in a certain way. Another area that people often struggle with is knowing what to do with the adjective itself. Do I need to change its form? If so, how do I do that? Well, when talking about similarities, we don't change the adjective at all. It stays in its base form. But when talking about differences, we use the comparative form of the adjective. If you're someone who struggles with knowing when to add ER or when to use the word more, I've already made a video called Comparative and Superlative Adjectives for Beginners, where I explain this in detail. I won't go over it again here, but I'll leave a link to that video below. And I highly recommend checking it out after this one. For now, just keep in mind that when comparing similarities, you don't change the adjective. But when comparing differences, there are two possible changes that you can make to the adjective. Now let's go back and look at the mistakes in our first two original sentences. In the sentence, Paul is taller than John, the speaker has mixed the equative and the comparative constructions together. Since we're talking about a similarity here, all we need to do is replace than with as. So the correct sentence would be, Paul is as tall as John. For the next sentence, I was lucky than my little brother, the speaker remembered to use than, but since this is a comparative construction, they need to change the form of the adjective as well. In this case, they should add er to lucky, making it, I was luckier than my little brother. Our last two sentences, Monday is usually busiest than Wednesday or Friday, and I am the younger in my family, also make a comparison, but involve a misunderstanding of when to use a comparative adjective versus when to use a superlative one. So what's the difference between these two types of adjectives? Well, comparative adjectives have a different form than superlative adjectives, use a different sentence structure, and have a different meaning. But let's focus on the third difference, their meaning. First, let's go back to the sentence structure that we looked at earlier for comparing a difference. We started with a noun or noun phrase followed by a verb, then the comparative construction adjective than, and ended with a second noun or noun phrase. The first noun is being compared to the second noun, and that second noun can represent a single individual person, thing, or object, such as my phone is more expensive than my watch, or Paul is older than John, or it can represent a group of individual people, things, or objects, such as Jessica is prettier than her sisters, or the boss is more knowledgeable than his staff of employees. And here we want to pay more attention to the meaning of the second noun rather than its form, because certain nouns like staff, class, or family can represent a group of people instead of only one person, even though they are grammatically singular. Now, the subject noun can be compared to a single member of a set or group, multiple members of the set or group, or all of the members of a set or group. Let me show you what this looks like. Our first set or group includes all the months of the year and their average temperatures, as shown in this graph of the average monthly temperatures in Toronto, Canada. For example, the average temperature in September is 23 degrees, the average temperature in May is 19 degrees, and so on. Now, I can use a comparative adjective to compare the difference in temperature of a month to a single other month. For example, April is warmer than December. Or I can use it to compare the temperature of a month to multiple other months, like March is cooler than May, July, and August, or November is warmer than December, January, and February. However, when talking about the nouns in any group, with the highest or lowest degree of quality, in this case, it's July with the highest temperature and January with the lowest, we have two options. First, we can use a comparative adjective, in this case, to talk about the difference between January or July and all the other months. For example, you could say, January is colder than any other month, or July is hotter than any other month. The second option is to use a superlative adjective. But before we do that, let's organize the months in a different way. Superlatives are more about ranking than just showing differences. So let's list the months based on their average temperature. We're still using the same information, but now we're looking at it from a different perspective. This is what a superlative does. In this case, it helps us identify the months that are at the top or bottom of the scale. For example, you could use a superlative adjective to say, July is the hottest month, or January is the coldest month. Whether I say January is colder than any other month and July is hotter than any other month, or January is the coldest month and July is the hottest month, I'm essentially giving the same information, just looking at things from a different point of view. If I want to emphasize the difference in average temperature between January or July and the other months, I'll use the comparative form. But if I simply want to indicate their ranking as the highest or lowest on the temperature scale, I'll use the superlative form. So to summarize, a comparative construction can do many things. It can compare a noun to an individual noun. My couch is more comfortable than your couch. It can compare a noun to an entire group. My couch is more comfortable than the couches in the store. It can compare a noun to a single member of a group. David is taller than Sue. It can compare a noun to multiple members of a group. David is taller than Sue, Brian, and Tom. Or it can compare a noun to all the members of a group. David is taller than all the other students in the class. And a superlative construction like David is the tallest student is just another way of looking at a comparison of this subject noun to all the other members of a group. But unlike the comparative, it doesn't focus on difference, but rather on ranking. Now going back to our final two sentences, which type of construction should be used? A comparative construction or a superlative construction? Let's start with Monday is busiest than Wednesday or Friday. Our subject noun, Monday, is being compared to multiple members of a set, but not to all the other members of the set. In this case, one day of the week is being compared to 2 other days of the week, but not to all the other days of the week. So using a comparative construction here is the only option. So Monday is busier than Wednesday or Friday is correct. In our final sentence, I am the younger in my family, the second noun refers to an entire set or group of which the subject is also a part of. In this case, the speaker is talking about their own family, and the subject I is being compared to all the other members of the family. Since the subject is being compared to everyone else in the group, we have the option to either use a comparative construction to highlight the difference, like I am younger than any of my family members, or we can use a superlative construction to show that the speaker's age ranks the lowest, saying, I am the youngest in my family. Today we looked at 3 constructions commonly used to compare things in English and reviewed their differences. I hope this video helps you avoid some of the common mistakes people make when confusing equatives, comparatives, and superlatives. As always, I'll respond to any questions you leave in the comments section below. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.